am an engineer by training. I have a few degrees, and we'll see a little bit about that here in a few moments. And I'm really excited to be one of your esteemed guests today, as I've looked at the list of prior presenters, and it's an honor to be part of this group. So today I'll tell you a little bit about my story and where engineering has taken me over my career thus far. Next slide. So we'll show you a bit of an agenda here. I'll start out and I'll give you kind of an overview of my education and experience. Then I'll take you kind of way back to childhood and talk a little bit about how I came to choose engineering. I've got a confession for you all in the middle. I'll share a little bit about my work today and where it takes me. And then I will sum up with 3 things that I learned, and I'm hoping that I can help you learn without the experiences that I had when I was the president of the Society of Women Engineers. So that's when you'll know I'm done, getting close to being done, when we talk about those 3 things I want you to learn. And as Raul said, we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A. So he's going to help field those questions that you put in the chat. So next slide. So I wanted to start a little bit with kind of talking a touch about some of the things engineers do. A lot of what we do is behind the scenes, and you never know that we're here, as long as we do our jobs well. So engineers, help us be safe in planes and cars. We make sure your bridges work. We make sure that you get safe drinking water and have power, which for those of you that are in Texas may not have worked so well a few weeks ago. But we do those things that are usually behind the scenes, and you never know much about them. In the end, we really help make your life more secure, more comfortable, and more rewarding. And we come up with things that you never would have imagined wanting. So lots of different kinds of things that engineers do, and I'm going to give you an example of what I do. Next slide. So this is a picture of kind of my fun resume that I keep. I often really enjoy drawing things out as I try to think through things, and I try to figure out how to talk to people about them. So this is something I did to talk with folks about my career. Kind of the top boxes that are in sort of the lighter blue, those are some of the different titles that I've had and the different roles that I've had and the different areas that I've worked. Then those bigger boxes in the middle are the actual companies that I've worked for. I'll go through this in a minute, but I spent the first part of my career in the aerospace industry, and now I've moved on to the medical device industry. They seem like very different industries, but they actually have a lot in common, namely high regulation and the need for super high quality. I've gotten 3 degrees from my home institution of Arizona State University, go Devils, and I can't quite do the hand signal. I got my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering in 1988, my master's degree in industrial engineering in 1998, and if you're paying attention, you're going to sense a theme here, and my PhD in sustainable engineering in 2018. Evidently, I like years that end in 8. I also really enjoy learning new things in addition to my degrees, so I have several certifications. Some might say I just have a thing about adding letters to my last name. I'm a licensed engineer in the state of Arizona, and I have a stamp to prove it, though I've never used that stamp. I've also done a lot of work around process improvement. I'm a lean expert, a black belt, a master black belt. Those have nothing to do with karate or any kind of martial art. They're referring to Six Sigma. I'm a professional program manager, which is really what I do these days, a master change manager, and then my most recent certification that I've added is as a coach. I'm a certified coach, and I do some executive coaching these days. One of the themes that has gone through my professional life is my activity in the Society of Women Engineers. My mother made me join when I was in college. She told me that I was going to need the contacts from SWE to help with my career, and she was absolutely right. It's also the place where I found my tribe. I found the people who understand me, who are like me, and it's a place where I feel like I really belong. So I spent time in leadership at the Arizona State University section, the section in Phoenix, a few other roles. I joined the Society Board of Directors, spent 10 years on it, was the president, which I'll share some of those experiences. And now I stay involved in what I like to say is the peanut gallery. I kind of sit in the back and watch and take on things when the organization needs me. I am a lifetime member. I became a fellow of the society along the way as well. I've also given back in my community. I really enjoy staying connected with my community. So I've got some board service that's here local in Phoenix that I've participated in. But my most important role, according to my little girl, Sophia, who's laying down right here, is that of dog mom. I do have a couple little treats. So if she starts barking along the way, you might see me randomly throw something to try to distract her. So next slide. So that's a high level overview of my career, but I'm going to take you sort of all the way back. As a child, I was really known for having an amazing imagination. I'm an only child, so I had a lot of imaginary friends that I talked to along the way. I'm also a native Phoenician. I was born here. I've lived here. I've talked a couple times about leaving, but you know what? It's home. And so this is where I will stay. I'll be glad to travel anywhere, but I am a Phoenician at heart. I'm also the child of what became a single mom. I'm a Gen Xer, latchkey kid. So I actually did spend a lot of time alone as a child and took on a lot of responsibility early on. But again, throughout all of that, I was very imaginative and very creative, and not necessarily in an artistic way, more in ways of just figuring out how to do things. My mother was very much a big promoter of whatever career I wanted. The first thing I remember wanting to do was to be a fire person. And so mom, while she was having a party, had a little setup where she rang a bell and everybody timed me that was at the party while I got dressed and ran out to fight the fire. I think that was like at 5. A little bit later, I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to help people get through divorces more easily. Then a little bit later, I wanted to be a ballet dancer. And that just didn't quite work out. But along the way, I knew that I wanted to move into a field where I could very comfortably support myself, especially as I saw my mom struggle to support us. I never wanted for anything. She did an amazing job, but I did want it to be a little smoother. So before I started high school, I thought that I was going to hate math. I was going to hate algebra. I have no idea why I thought this. So I decided to take algebra before I went to high school. I took it in summer school. And I actually really liked it. It was really easy for me. I would sit in class and do my homework. I don't think I made any friends doing that because a lot of the kids that were in the class had not done so well during the regular school year. So I think that they were a little jealous that it came so easily to me. In the 3.5 years that I was in high school, I actually took 5 years of math classes because I liked it so much. I did decide to leave high school a little bit early to go to college, mainly just because I kind of got bored. So next slide. When I called up Arizona State University, that's just down the road, to register for college a little bit early, they said, well, what do you want to study and what college do you want to go in? And I thought a little bit about it, and I thought, civil engineering, that's what I want to do. The reason why I said that is because we had a family friend who had a Ferrari. And from time to time, I got to have rides in the Ferrari. And I had learned, had become friends with the family and learned that the father was an engineer. He was a civil engineer. And so that's why I said, I want to start out in civil engineering. I was there until they started talking about wastewater treatment. And then I went, ooh, I want to find something else. So I shifted on to look at mechanical engineering. I think it was about that time that I also learned that the dad actually owned an engineering company, and the Ferrari was actually a kit car. So it wasn't quite as impressive as I thought, but nevertheless, kind of a funny story as to how I chose engineering. Next slide. So I was really fortunate that I was involved in the Society of Women Engineers as a student, because it really helped me get through college. And here's the point where I'm going to make a confession. The first couple of years of college, I mentioned I left high school early to go to college. For some weird reason, I thought college was going to be easier than high school. It didn't really turn out that way. So I happen to have with me here my calculus book, and you'll see that like it's a little bit in bad shape. And it's not in bad shape because it's been a long time since I took calculus in my first year of college. It's in bad shape because I used to sleep with it. I was trying to study, but maybe was doing a little more partying with friends than studying. And in my first year of college, I earned 4 hours of credit. Usually you would earn about 24 in your first year of college. And I liked first semester calculus so well, I took it 3 times before I got a passing grade. So pretty quickly, there was a little bit of a kind of a come to Jesus meeting. Actually, not with my mom. It was with somebody at the university who said, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" I took a look at my life, decided, yep, this was what I wanted to do. And I made some adjustments so that I could focus a lot more on school. I quit working, basically a full-time job, and started a job that was on campus so I could be closer to campus, really adjusted, and still was challenged, but nevertheless made it through school. Next slide, please. So some folks might actually tell you that engineering college is really hard. You know, what I'm going to suggest is you don't actually have to be a genius to be an engineer. I am not one by any stretch of the imagination. I work with a lot of really smart people. And in fact, I actually help them put schedules and budgets and plans together so that they can actually accomplish what they want to accomplish. But I'm not a genius by any stretch of the imagination. You do have to be a little focused and focus on your career when you're in college. And the question I would ask you is, what interesting work isn't challenging and doesn't have challenges once in a while? When you think about almost any profession, every single one of them is going to have some times where you do have to focus and you do have to buckle down a bit. So don't let myths about engineering school being super, super hard deter you from going down that path. Next slide. So my first job out of college, which I got because of my contacts in the Society of Women Engineers, was at a little company at the time called Garrett Turbine Engine Company. It now has become Honeywell, and I built and tested gas turbine engines. Now, some of you may be saying, I don't know what a gas turbine engine is, but I bet you actually do. These are engines that are on planes. Some of them are out on the wings that you can see, but some of them are actually behind the scenes. And that's mostly what I worked on. I worked on what's called an APU, or an auxiliary power unit. And in this picture, and another confession, I didn't actually dress that way to work most of the time. Most of the time I wore jeans and tennis shoes and t-shirts because I liked to really get my hands dirty. I liked to be able to touch things and really experience things myself. But the gentleman that's sitting next to me, Joe Kenny, he was a wonderful mentor for me and really helped teach me how to test engines. In this particular test, we were doing what's called an installation test, and we were testing the engine inside part of the aircraft. This is for a C-17 aircraft. It's a military aircraft, kind of a troop hauler. And we actually had part of that aircraft here in Phoenix, Arizona, and installed the engines in it. And we would look at what were the temperatures the different components got to. We were particularly concerned about electronics. They don't like to get that hot, you know, over about 100, 200 degrees, and they kind of stop working. So we had to make sure that the airflow was right inside the installation so that they would continue working. So I really enjoyed this work. But I always wasn't so sure how I really connected to helping humanity. Next slide. Until one day I came home and was watching the news, and it really hit me like a ton of bricks. So probably a few of you may remember what's called the miracle on the Hubsan. A few of you may not have been alive then, but may have heard people talk about it. This was when Captain Sullyberger and his co-pilot were taking off from an airport in New York, and they actually hit a flock of geese. In fact, a really big flock of geese. And unfortunately, those geese went through the engines of the plane, the propulsion engines, and killed them. They lost their engines. Those two did a lot really well that day. They made a lot of really good choices really fast. And one of the things that they did is they turned on the APU, that auxiliary power unit. That gave them electricity to be able to power the control surfaces on the plane so that they could safely glide the plane to a landing in the Hudson River. I started crying. I had led the team that had developed the starting logic to make sure that APU could start anywhere in the operating envelope of the plane. And I had led it for that family, not necessarily that engine, but that family of engines. It's like, wow, this is how engines contribute to humanity. Pretty great. Next slide. I loved the aerospace industry and I wanted to connect a little more. So I went ahead and I moved on to the medical device industry, and I work for a company called Medtronic. We are the world's largest medical device industry. We focus mostly on devices as opposed to pharmaceuticals. And this picture is of our founder, Earl Bakken, who unfortunately isn't with us anymore. I had the great fortune to meet him a couple times. He started Medtronic as a young electrical engineer. He lived in Minneapolis, and he would repair medical equipment for doctors. And there was a certain time period in the Minnesota history where they had a power outage near Halloween, I believe. And some children who had had heart surgery died because they were on heart machines that were plugged into the wall. And when the power went out, the heart machine stopped. So the doctors asked Earl, hey, can you make anything that will work on a battery? And so what Earl is holding in his hand in the bottom right, that kind of big square piece, is one of the first pacemakers. It was actually hooked up to a car battery, so it wasn't very portable, but it did the job. You know, the next time there was a power outage, people didn't pass away. What he's holding in his other hand is one of our most recent pacemakers, which is about the size of kind of your pinky, a little less than that. It's pretty cool. It's a leadless pacemaker. Now, we make all kinds of devices focused on alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life. I work in the cardiac area, which is very much related to the pacemakers. And in fact, this is, I wish we were in a room and I could hand these things around. This is what a pacemaker looks like. So it's pretty cool, not too heavy. This is a pretty recent one. And the area that I focus in on are the electronics that are inside the pacemaker or defibrillator. I'm going to show you just another picture here. These are the electronics for a defibrillator, a little big, and these are the electronics for a pacemaker. And I've worked over the years with our suppliers that supply all kinds of products on here. Some of the dye that you see on the back, the green board itself, which is called a printed wiring board. You can see a lot of components on there that are gold. I've worked with the gold plating. So my work has taken me all over the place. I've really enjoyed it, and I want to share a little bit of that with you. So in the next slide. So a lot of the electronics industry in the world is in Asia. And in particular, I've had the wonderful opportunity to travel with our suppliers. I love to go to what in lean manufacturing we call the Gemba, which is where the action's at. So these are some pictures from some suppliers I visited in the Singapore area. I've had the fortune to go there many times. The picture on the left-hand side, some of you may recognize what's behind me. It's a hotel called the Marina Bay Sands, just really cool. The hotel is in the 3 towers, and then across the top of the towers, they're connected by a structure that looks kind of like a cruise ship. It's where the pool is and a bunch of restaurants, a very fun place. I've really enjoyed my work with suppliers all over the world. And there's probably a few of you that have maybe flown to Singapore. The flight is 17 hours, San Francisco to Singapore. So every time I go, I try to take a little vacation time and explore a little bit myself. So next slide. I've had some wonderful vacations since those flights are so long. I've gotten to go to India and Thailand, and I've shown you a couple pictures here from Bali and Cambodia. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, what's behind me is called Angkor Wat, which is an amazing temple complex that goes over miles and miles and miles. Next slide. Another wonderful experience that I've had where the company invested in me was I got to join a group called the Global Innovation Fellows. And this is a program that the company has where they take a group of employees who don't know each other and they put them someplace not close to where they live. Usually it's outside of the United States, and they give them a problem to work for 3 weeks. Sometimes it's associated with a nonprofit, a local NGO. Sometimes it's associated with the business. And so I had the good fortune to go spend time in Colombia studying incontinence with a group of 4 other employees who I just adore. We had 3 weeks to come up with a business case to help people in Colombia with incontinence. And the case that we came up with could help anybody anywhere. Next slide. We spent 1 week in Cali and 2 weeks in Bogota. And if anybody's ever been to Bogota, the traffic is wicked. So we spent a lot of time working in the van. You can see the picture on the right as we were putting ideas up on the window of the van. And most of our work was fueled by afternoon stops at their local cafes, the equivalent of Starbucks in Colombia, which is called Juan Valdez. So we enjoyed stopping at many of those. There is as many Juan Valdez stores as there are Starbucks here in the United States. I do actually think there is a Starbucks in Colombia, but they have to serve only Colombian coffee. So next slide. So just like when I traveled to Southeast Asia, I was really fortunate to be able to take some additional time to travel around Colombia. I took another week and visited 3 other spots. One of the very memorable things I got to do at the end of the trip is go up for Easter service to a church that is up on top of a hill in the middle of Bogota called Montserrat. And you can take what's called a funicular up there, which is kind of like a cable car. But I chose to do what the locals do, which is hike up. So I think it took me about 2 hours to get up there and had an amazing time. So my work has taken me around the world for sometimes very focused work, but I also get some amazing relief, learn more about the culture when I take time to explore even more. Next slide. So now is another point where Medtronic gave me a wonderful opportunity. As I mentioned, I'd been involved in the Society of Women Engineers for years and had been tapped to be the president. Medtronic was very excited about this when they hired me. They have been a very strong supporter of many of the engineering societies, and we're very much behind this. So the picture on the right-hand side shows many of my Medtronic employees, friends, who were at the installation where I was installed. So now I'm going to share with you just a few things I learned during that time. Next slide. So one of the key things that I really want to share with you is important people are just like you. They're just like you and me. There's nothing magical or special. For the most part, they want to help you. So I'm going to walk through some of these pictures. In the upper right-hand portion is the gentleman who at the time was the president of Trinidad and Tobago. He is a chemical engineer, or was a chemical engineer. His name is George Maxwell Richards. And when I met him, I think I said, "Hi, I'm Virginia." And he said, "Hi, I'm George." Little did I know, I probably should have been calling him His Excellency. So super nice guy. We had a great chat and really enjoyed meeting him. On the bottom right are a couple folks that you guys might actually recognize. The gentleman to my right is Dean Kamen, who is one of the co-founders of First Robotics. If you don't know about First Robotics, look it up. It is an amazing program that is really impactful. And they have several different levels, different ages of kids that build robots. This was actually at the worldwide competition for the highest level of robotics. The gentleman on the other side is actually John Abel, who's one of the co-founders of Boston Scientific. Then scooting over kind of to the middle bottom is a wonderful woman. Her name is Yvonne Brill. She is a real-life rocket scientist. She actually created a hydrazine resistojet, which is a hydrazine rocket still in use on satellites today. I was very honored to be giving her the John Fritz Medal, which is the engineering equivalent of a Nobel Prize. And next to her is actually Naomi Brill, who's a friend of mine. That's her daughter. Yvonne did a lot of this groundbreaking work around the dinner table after the kids had gone to bed. Then the last picture that's up there, and through most of these pictures, you can see a little bear. It's the SWE bear, who traveled with me when I was SWE president and really was the star of all the pictures. But this is when the SWE bear and I got to run a congressional briefing on Capitol Hill. Very cool experience. Got to meet a lot of our elected officials. And again, they sit down and talk just like you and I. So important people are just like you. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Next slide. And I also wanted to share another experience that was afforded to me during this time. I got to spend 24 hours on the USS Texas, which is a Virginia-class nuclear sub. I really learned during this particular visit to feel the fear and then go do something anyway. So the top picture is where I learned that you can actually get an aerobic workout climbing up and down the stairs. That's how you get from floor to floor in the subs, and boy, there's a lot of stairs, a lot of ladders to climb. The right-hand picture is when we were headed out to the Atlantic before we went 600 feet deep in the ocean. I do have to tell you, you didn't have any sensation of that at all once you were inside the sub. But most importantly is the picture on the bottom, which is a picture of one of the colleagues that was on the trip at the same time. A bunch of folks were asked if they could climb in a torpedo tube and go to the end, and there's a little thing you can sign your name on so that when they launch the torpedo, you know that your name went out into the ocean. And I remember looking at that and thinking, I want to do that. I was afraid though. I was afraid, a little claustrophobic, afraid to climb down the tube. And it's something I regret. I wish that I did. So it really made me realize when you feel that fear, that's a time to like look inside and say, I should probably do this anyway. And I share with you a quote from a fellow SWE member who was a rear admiral in the Navy, Grace Murray Hopper, super cool lady. She's probably about this tall. Saw her speak at a conference. One of the things she says is a ship in port is safe, but that's not what ships are for. So sail out to sea and do new things. So when you feel the fear, think about doing it anyway. Next slide. Just a couple more slides here. One of the last things I want to share with you is, just be present. Be right where you are right now. There's always something good in every moment, even though things may seem a little uncomfortable at times, and for many of us, uncomfortable these days, because it's not like what we are used to feel. Time is going to move faster than you think it will, especially as we get a little bit older. So take the moment and savor every moment. Last slide. So I share with you one more little creative thing I do. It's my Mini Cooper. When you buy a Mini Cooper, they encourage you to UIfy it. And this is my UIfied Mini Cooper. There's no other one like it in the world. She's got eyelashes and eyeliner and hearts and peace signs and a big love sign on the top of her hood now. So summing it up, important people are just like you. A little bit of fear can be a really good thing, and be present, enjoy every moment. Thank you for listening today. And now I'll take questions.
Great presentation, I love it. And I didn't know about the little bear from SWE, so thank you. Let me go through the questions that we have. We have many people writing comments and questions, and thank you for doing that. They're thanking you for the presentation. very real, right on target. Um, One of the things that was asked, besides comment, more comments, oh, excellent presentation, very impressive. Uh, is your work at Medtronic funded by grants or separate, like government agency?
Mm-hmm. So, so when I was doing the Global Innovation Fellows, that is kind of funded in a unique way by Medtronic, but it is actually funded partially through their foundation. The regular work that I do every single day, making, I can find my pacemaker here again, making, helping suppliers with parts for pacemakers, that's just funded by Medtronic as a regular course of business, just like anybody who works for GM or Intel, anything like that.
Great. Let me go back to your bio. And in your bio, you have, I get joy out of organizing and creating strategies from ether, transforming chaos into order and synthesizing disparate information. Could you elaborate on that?
So I mentioned that I'm not a genius. I'm not the person out there designing our components for pacemakers. I'm not going to come up with some new technical breakthrough. But what I do is when we have situations where, say, a supplier calls us and say we ran out of this, or we need to move, or we come up with a better way to do something. I'm the one who sits back and figures out, okay, how do we actually do that? What's the most important thing to do first? What's the next most important thing? And so I love it when things are a little chaotic and when a lot of people are kind of like, oh my gosh, my head hurts. There's too much here. I can't figure out what to do. I'm the one who helps kind of weed through that and thinks through things and figures it out. These are more kind of soft skills. They're not, sort of some of the things that people think of when they think of a traditional engineer.
Great. We have another comment. If you can show all the devices, all the pacemaker that you showed, if you can show them again one by one.
Yeah, so let's see. Okay, so I think I showed, this is a pacemaker. It's kind of a basic pacemaker. I'll show you the front and back. The top part is what we call the header, the leads for the pacemaker that actually take the charge to the heart would plug in here. And usually it's just implanted just under the skin in a little pocket. So they put the leads in through a vein to actually get, close to the heart, or actually attach into the heart. And then they would put the pacemaker in a little pocket. Believe it or not, that's often considered a elective surgery. And then I think I showed you guys some of the electronics. So this is electronics for a defibrillator, which is a much bigger device. It's about 2 times the size. So that's kind of front and back. And then this little piece right here are what the electronics look like for a pacemaker. So that's kind of the back and then the front there.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Oh, we have more comments. Thank you for this awesome presentation. You are amazing. A woman engineer. Awesome. And many hearts, some hearts also there. Another one wrote, thank you, very good. And more comments about amazing. Let me go back for a second to your bio. It caught my attention that you started your bio with alchemist, strategist, coach, program manager, process improvement expert, STEM advocate. Out of all those, if there's one that stands out more than the other one, that hits you, like feels you, like feels your heart, your passion.
I think I have passion in a lot of areas, which is why I describe myself as many things these days. I will always say, when you ask me what I am and I answer in one word, I will always say an engineer, even though I haven't had the title of engineer for a very long time. Um, Engineering is what is my foundation. It's my thought process. It's how I get logic. But in terms of all those roles, what fulfills me the most, it's I love organizing things, and it's everything from, like, my closet is organized in type of clothes and color of clothes to like I mentioned about the projects. When a project comes to me and it's, people could sort of bring me this pile of stuff, like, we don't know what to do. I love just figuring out all things, and a big part of my job is actually communicating that to people. A big part of my job is communicating to leadership. Here's what's going on, and here's what we need to do. In fact, this week I've given 3 presentations about a particular project that I'm working on to different levels of leadership.
Okay, good, good. We have another question here. I was always interested in traveling. Did you look for opportunities to go out of the country, or did they just happen throughout your career?
Mhm. I think really early on, I remember, this was probably like 3 years into working. I remember sitting in a director's office, and I was working on some projects where we were sending people all over the place, Germany, Taiwan. And I was like, I want to do that. And I remember the director asking me, like, are you really sure you want to do that? I was like, yes, I do. Um, Over the years, I'd say in some cases I have positioned myself to get into roles where I know that travel is an opportunity because I do enjoy it. In a lot of cases, though, the opportunities have sort of fallen in my lap. Probably not all of my colleagues take advantage of them like I do, where, if I'm going to be on a plane more than 8 hours to get someplace, I'm going to try to take a week of vacation. um, so I think it just depends on how you position yourself. I would say in general, um, the last decade I've worked with our suppliers, and almost by definition, suppliers are going to be these days around the world. So that's, if you want to get yourself in a place where you are traveling, that's one way to do it.
Good, thank you. Now, there's questions about calculus. So there's 2 questions. One, why was calculus so difficult for you? The second one, do you use calculus for work?
So I think it was so hard for me because it was one of the first classes, and I needed to learn how to learn. I Like I said, high school came very easy to me. Um, I didn't really know how to study because I hadn't had to. So I suspect I could have taken many classes and would have had just as much of a hard time as I did with calculus. It was that I needed to learn how to learn. Um, I will tell you, a good part of calculus is doing, integration. I have never done an integral in my career at all. It is the basis, though, for understanding a lot of what I have done. So I needed to understand, kind of that baseline to be able to do statistics, to be able to understand a lot of what the design engineers, and they show me the details, but I don't actually do that math, that kind of math at work anymore, or not anymore. I've never done it, so ever.
Okay, all right. We have here another question. It's about your career, Ally, Honeywell to Medtronic. Why the change? Was it something that it was building inside of you? It was an opportunity that presented itself? Why the change?
I had a lot of friends that worked for Medtronic, and they spoke so highly of the company. They really enjoyed it. It had a great atmosphere, and oh my gosh, you can't beat the mission. it's important to make aircraft that are safe, but it's even more important to make medical devices that are safe. And in fact, I just saw somebody flash across the chat that somebody in their family just had an ICD put in, and so, which is a defibrillator. And when you meet somebody who says, I have your device, or my, parents or grandparents have your device, and like they went from sitting on the couch not being able to do much to living a regular life, that gives you fulfillment in a way that it's hard to get anyplace else. So like I said, I greatly enjoyed the aerospace industry, but I knew this was out here, and I wanted to come do it.
Good, good. Going along those lines about Medtronics, one person in the audience says, 2 weeks ago, I got my third AICD was installed. It's a CRT-D, so it's been different. Did you have anything to do with designing or acquiring the supply chain for this type of pacemaker defibrillator?
Well, here's what I can tell you. For Medtronic, if it's a Medtronic device, all of the electronics for all of our pacemakers, defibrillators, and neurostimulators are made in Tempe, Arizona, in the facility that when I go to the office, I sit at. And so, again, if it was our device, you've got electronics that, not that I personally touched, but I worked probably on your printed wiring board. I worked on the way that the electronics are connected to other parts in the device. So yes.
Okay. Now they're asking, does Medtronic make any device for sleep apnea?
So I don't know that we do anything specific. I don't think we make CPAPs. But I do think they were looking at using a neurostimulator device, which is like a pacemaker, to help some folks probably with severe sleep apnea. But I don't think we have anything in the market.
Okay, good. There's one over here that says, my desire is to re-enter supply chain management. I've been off for 9 years for personal reasons. Where do you suggest I look for work to re-enter the workforce?
So definitely a place that really gets to my heart. I don't know if it's the case with this person, but we come across, particularly a lot of women, a few men, who step out of the workforce for a bit, particularly when children are young. And I'm a big proponent of, bring them on, give them a chance. They've got maturity, especially if they've become a parent. There's all kinds of knowledge and wisdom that comes with that. And very honestly, you're not really missing much by stepping out of the workforce. I mean, you have to figure out what's new in Microsoft Office. But other than that, all the language and all the tools that you're going to use, they change every year anyway. So we all have to learn them along the way. There are a couple programs. There's a program that the Society of Women Engineers has run several times. They call it Careers 2.0. And it is a program where they do some training for some folks that have stepped out of the workforce for a little bit, and then hook them up with kind of internships. And typically most of those folks get hired on to the various companies. Medtronic is one of the companies that does participate in that program with the Society of Women Engineers. So I would say, look for opportunities like that help you kind of do that bridge. Please don't be intimidated. You haven't lost much by being out of the workforce, except for some specific lingo, which you're going to catch back up on in a minute.
Good, thank you. That was good. There's another question here. What is your favorite experience? I don't know if that was travel experience, but it says favorite experience.
Something I didn't talk about. I've spent a good part of my career in process improvement. So working on lean manufacturing, working on Six Sigma, and in fact, I spent a decade doing that. a lot of that work is helping to influence others, to help them look at things a little bit differently. And to actually get people to shift their thought process usually takes many, many, many times where you ask somebody something or you show them something before they finally change. And so one experience I did have is I had been supporting a specific manufacturing area in on the Tempe campus, and it was what I did when I first came to Medtronic, and I remember butting heads with several managers who just did not want to change the way that they looked at things. And I worked hard at that, and then went off and did other things, and then ended up kind of coming back to work with them again as a program manager. And it was so wild because the language out of their mouths was exactly the language that I had, tried to teach them years before. So that was a wonderful experience to be able to see over time how things got better and things and people changed and approach things with more of a continuous improvement mindset.
Good, good. I don't know if the audience have catch on this, but this was not planned. She's wearing purple, and I also am wearing purple, and she has her chair on the back, stand up for science. I see that you're, of course, a science proponent, and good for that. Thank you. You mentioned during the presentation, we have met a same person, Dean Kamen. I met him, one of the founders of First Robotics, excellent gentleman that have done so much for students worldwide. Basically, First Robotics is a worldwide organization. We have 10 teams in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for First Robotics, so we support that. We're a proponent of STEM education for the younger generations. And but anyway, so let me ask you about out of all those folks that you've met throughout the years, is there a conversation that still something, a sentence, a statement that still with you that some of you said?
I think that the thing that really resonates with me is, in some cases, having the opportunity to sit side by side and work with some of those people on problems in the Society of Women Engineers. There's one gal I didn't show you a picture of, and she was a former IBM really high level, like she was a few steps away from the CEO, and we were working on some strategic planning, and it was the first time where somebody that high level had said, your ideas matter. You've got good ideas. Your thought process is good. And it's one of those places where I really went, oh, okay, I am smart. And so it really helped build my confidence. And that's one of the things that I hope the folks listening get is you all are probably there already.
That is true. That is true. It's most of the time we're the ones that put barriers and nobody else is putting barriers. It's a matter of applying what you know, be out there. If you're talking about work, show up for work, take care of what you have to do, the assignment. If you're talking about education, go to class, study, and things will fall into place. So sometimes it's like we say in Spanish, echarle ganas, basically, take that step, give some effort, put some effort into it. That's great.
Exactly.
That's great. Out of those countries, if you have to pick one and you say, hey, you know what, I would like to go over there and retire. If there's a place that you have visited that you will say, I would like to go there. I know that you will not leave Phoenix. You just said that you will stay there. But if there's a place outside the US that you will consider out of those countries that you visited?
Well, there's still a big long list of places that I want to go.
Bucket list.
Yeah, there's still a bucket list. I would love to live in really a Spanish speaking country because it's the language un poquito I have a little of. Yeah, any Spanish living a speaking country, I would love to live for, like 6 months just to experience Spain. I'd go back to Colombia in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Good, good, excellent. It's good to know. Now, ASU, 3 degrees, ending in 8. Was that planned?
No.
No, that just happened. Okay.
It just well, it it happened for the bachelor's and the master's, and then by the time I started the PhD, as I was laying out like when am I going to take which classes, because at the PhD level, you have to think about that a little more because sometimes a class is offered once or twice. And I laid things out, and then I realized, oh, I could finish this in 2018. Of course, this was like in 2014. And I went, okay, I have to make that happen just for the symmetry. So yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Good job. Good job. Well, we're getting closer to the end, and I would like to ask you, is there, if you can leave us with a statement that will apply to anyone in the audience um, about their future, what will be your advice for anyone that is listening now or that will watch it later in our YouTube channel?
Don't let anything stop you. If you feel it in here, you can do it.
Excellent, excellent. That is good. That is good. We have many students that join. We have also some participants from some of our programs, and that applies to all. I mentioned to you earlier that during these events, our heart is to get the information across. You have done an excellent job in presenting about your career, your obstacles, your accomplishments, and I know that through this presentation, many lives been touched. On behalf of Star National, I want to thank you for your time, dedication, and we will be talking soon.